The pilot of Viper 1 didn't know it yet, but he was already dead before he even touched the trigger. At 04:17 a.m., two Venezuelan F-16s screamed toward the USS Jason Dunham on a mission of intimidation. It was a fatal miscalculation. In exactly 93 seconds, the Caribbean turned from a standoff into a graveyard. This isn't a story about courage, it's a story about systems. From the moment they took off, the ship's AI had already calculated the exact second they would die. Here is how $70 million of air power was erased by a wall of American steel. At exactly 04:17 local time, the southern Caribbean transformed from a silent expanse of ocean into a high-velocity graveyard. Two Venezuelan Air Force F-16As screamed across the dark water at 450 knots. Their afterburners cut two glowing streaks through the pre-dawn gloom. Their mission, on paper, had been simple: force the USS Jason Dunham to alter its course. They were sent to prove to the world that American warships could be pushed around in Venezuela's backyard. But somewhere between takeoff and the 12 nautical mile international boundary, simple became suicidal. Captain Emilio Reyes, a veteran with 23 years of flight experience, made the decision that would end his life. He pressed the trigger on his flight stick. In doing so, he initiated a chain of events that would last exactly 93 seconds. The USS Jason Dunham, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer floating quietly in the swells, answered his provocation with the kind of overwhelming algorithmic violence that turns advanced fighter jets into scattered debris fields. The outcome was never in doubt. The math had been decided before the jets even left the runway. The morning had started with arrogance. Venezuelan Naval Command had been tracking the American destroyer for 3 days. They were watching, waiting, and building a profile of its patrol patterns. The American vessel was conducting routine freedom of navigation operations, a deliberate assertion of international law that Caracas viewed as an act of aggression. President Maduro wanted a response. He wanted something dramatic, something that would play well on state television and rally national pride. He got much more than he bargained for. Captain Reyes taxied out of his hardened shelter at 03:42. His F-16A Block 15 was fueled, armed, and ready. Two AIM-9P Sidewinder missiles hung menacingly from the wingtip rails. 500 rounds of 20mm ammunition fed the M61 Vulcan cannon in the nose. His wingman, Lieutenant Miguel Vargas, carried an identical loadout. Together, they represented the sharp end of Venezuelan air power. They were Cold War relics about to collide with 21st century reality. 187 miles away, the USS Jason Dunham had already classified them as hostile. The ship's SPY-1D phased array radar tracked their departure from the exact moment their wheels left the Venezuelan concrete. Unlike the rotating radars of the past, this system did not spin. It stared. 4 fixed panels painted the sky with electromagnetic energy. No mechanical limitations, no blind spots, no escape. The system refreshed its picture every millisecond, processing more raw data per second than every computer used in the Apollo moon landings combined. The Aegis Baseline 9 combat system processed their flight profiles with cold, digital efficiency. Speed, altitude, heading, weapons configuration, rate of climb, fuel consumption estimates, and probable mission profile, everything was cataloged and analyzed before the Venezuelan pilots had even reached cruising altitude. The fire control computers had already generated 17 different engagement solutions. The missiles in the vertical launch system had already received preliminary targeting data. The kill chain was primed, locked, and waiting for a single human authorization. Inside the Combat Information Center of the destroyer, the atmosphere was surgical. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chin monitored the developing situation. In the cool glow of blue light and green displays, the quiet hum of electronics processed data faster than human thought. 2 yellow icons crawled across the tactical map. Viper 1, Viper 2. Inbound at high speed. She had seen aggressive approaches before. This one felt different. The flight profile was too committed. It was too direct. There was no reconnaissance pattern, no cautious standoff distance. These pilots were not coming to intimidate. They were coming to fight. Tow all stations. Weapons posture Alpha. Stand by for hostile engagement. The ship came alive. In the vertical launch system, 96 cells waited in perfect silence. SM-2 Block 3 missiles and ESSM interceptors rested in their tubes, each one a precisely engineered instrument of destruction. On the stern, the Phalanx close-in weapon system ran through its automated startup sequence, its 6 barrels spinning up with a hydraulic whine. It stood ready to fire 4,500 rounds per minute, creating a wall of tungsten in the sky. The kill chain was armed. Only the final human command remained. 40 nautical miles out, Captain Reyes felt the first sting of electronic warfare. His cockpit, once a sanctuary of control, became a cage of confusion. His AN/APG-66 radar began acting erratically. Ghost targets multiplied across his screen. Lock tones warbled and failed. The destroyer's electronic warfare suite was already working, jamming, spoofing, and corrupting his instruments with precisely tailored electromagnetic poison. His radar warning receiver screamed, indicating multiple threats from impossible directions. The Americans were inside his head, turning his own sensors against him. A rational pilot would have aborted. But Reyes was not feeling rational. He had orders. He had the weight of national pride on his shoulders. He pushed through the electronic storm, descending to 3,000 feet and accelerating to 520 knots. His radar was useless, but his eyes still worked. He could see the gray silhouette of the destroyer on the horizon. It looked small, it looked vulnerable. It was close enough to kill. Viper 2, weapons free, engaging with Fox 2? The words sealed his fate. Reyes selected his starboard AIM-9P Sidewinder and slewed the seeker head toward the ship. The infrared missile searched for heat. Engine exhaust, a thermal signature, anything to lock onto. The Arleigh Burke class had been designed to frustrate exactly this attack. It featured baffled exhaust vents, thermal diffusion systems, and signature reduction technology that cost more than the entire Venezuelan defense budget. But at 12 nautical miles, even a suppressed signature was detectable. The seeker growled. Good tone. Reyes squeezed the trigger. The Sidewinder dropped from the rail and ignited. A white smoke trail streaked toward the American warship at Mach 2.5. 3 seconds later, Vargas launched his own missile. 2 AIM-9Ps were inbound. The Venezuelan pilots had just crossed the line from provocation to an act of war. Inside the Combat Information Center, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Tow to weapons. Engage inbound missiles. ESSM, 2 rounds. The forward VLS cells erupted. 2 RIM-162 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles punched into the Caribbean sky on pillars of flame. The ESSM was designed for exactly this scenario, a close-range intercept against fast-moving targets. Each missile weighed 620 pounds. Each carried a blast fragmentation warhead packed with preformed tungsten penetrators. But the real magic was in the guidance system. Thrust vectoring control allowed the missile to pull 50 G-turns in the terminal phase, maneuvers that would reduce a human pilot to biological paste inside his flight suit. The Sidewinders never stood a chance. The AIM-9P was a 1970s design. Lethal against other aircraft, perhaps, but against a modern point defense system, it was a clay pigeon at a shooting range. The first intercept occurred at 6 nautical miles. The ESSM's proximity fuse calculated the optimal detonation point, 23 feet from the incoming Sidewinder. Close enough to guarantee total destruction. The warhead erupted, an expanding ring of tungsten fragments, traveling at 8,000 feet per second, shredded the Venezuelan missile into burning confetti. Pieces of guidance fin and rocket motor rained harmlessly into the Caribbean. The second intercept happened 3 seconds later. Same geometry, same result. The second Sidewinder vanished in a puff of orange flame and metallic debris. 2 threats eliminated. Total engagement time from launch detection to kill, 11 seconds. But the defensive action was only half the response. Lieutenant Commander Chin's voice cut through the CIC again. Tow to! Weapons, engage hostile aircraft, SM-2, Fox 3. The aft VLS cells opened, Two SM-2 Block 3 missiles roared into the sky. These were not defensive interceptors, these were offensive weapons. Ship killers repurposed for air defense. Each one carried a 220-pound blast fragmentation warhead. Each one could reach Mach 3.5. Each one could engage targets at over 100 nautical miles. Against two F-16s at 12 miles, it was not a dogfight. It was an execution. Captain Reyes saw the launch plumes, two bright points of light rising from the destroyer's deck. His training identified them instantly. Standard missiles. He had seconds to react. He pulled hard into a 7G brake turn, dumping flares, hoping to confuse the radar. It was a futile gesture. The SM-2 does not chase heat. It rides a radar beam reflected off the target. The ship's illuminator held Reyes in a grip of iron. The missile adjusted its course with terrifying speed, cutting the corner. Anticipating his turn, you cannot outmaneuver a computer that calculates your position 1,000 times a second. The first missile detonated. It wasn't a direct hit, it didn't need to be. The proximity fuse triggered the warhead just above the F-16's canopy. The blast wave snapped the aircraft's spine instantly. The wings sheared off. The fuselage disintegrated into a fireball of aviation fuel and aluminum. At 0418 and 43 seconds, Captain Emilio Reyes ceased to exist. Lieutenant Vargas, witnessing his leader's annihilation, attempted a climbing turn to escape. He made it 4 seconds longer. The second SM-2 caught him at the apex of his climb. The explosion was absolute, 93 seconds. That was the total duration of the engagement. The debris field spread across 3 square miles of Caribbean water. Search and rescue helicopters launched from the Jason Dunham found only fragments. A section of a wing, a burned flight glove, an oxygen mask still, attached to a shattered helmet. The sea claimed the rest. By nightfall, Venezuelan naval patrols had withdrawn to within 50 miles of the coastline. The aggressive posture was abandoned. The lesson had been learned in blood and fire. The investment in training and experience was unquantifiable. Venezuela had lost 2 veteran pilots and 2 airframes. But let's look at the hard numbers. The Venezuelan Air Force lost $70 million worth of aircraft. The United States Navy expended 2 ESSM missiles at $600,000 each. They fired 2 SM-2 Block 3 missiles at $2.4 million each. The total American expenditure was $6 million. The return on investment? The complete destruction of a hostile air element at a financial ratio of nearly 12-to-1. Plus, the intelligence gathered from the entire engagement was priceless. Radar, frequencies, communication protocols, tactical doctrine. Every second was recorded and cataloged for future reference. Within 6 hours, diplomatic channels ignited. Caracas screamed aggression. Washington simply pointed to the missile launches that preceded the American response. The evidence was irrefutable. Venezuelan forces had fired first. The SM-2 strikes were textbook self-defense under international maritime law. The propaganda victory Maduro wanted had transformed into an international humiliation. The fundamental truth of this engagement was simple, yet brutal. Modern naval warfare is not a contest of courage. It is a contest of systems. Captain Reyes had bravery. He had training. He had national pride burning in his chest. But none of that mattered against an integrated combat network that processed threats faster than his neurons could fire. His $35 million fighter jet was obsolete before it left the runway. It was a museum piece with missiles, a relic, pretending to be relevant in a digital age. The USS Jason Dunham continued her patrol. The sun climbed higher. The Caribbean returned to its postcard calm. Somewhere in the deep, the fragments of 2 Venezuelan fighters settled into the sand. They remain there as silent testimony to the cost of bringing analog courage to a digital fight. The lesson is stark. Never fire the first shot against an enemy who has already calculated the last shot. The math was done before you pulled the trigger. The outcome was decided before you left the ground. And the only variable you control is whether you die confused or die knowing exactly how badly you were outmatched.